My sister texted me last night from Oklahoma. Huh? Okay, Adam. But my sister texted me from Oklahoma last night and said, because of the time change, I can preach twice as long today and every day until the time change again next spring. No, I'm not going to do that. But I am glad to see everybody here this morning. I hope you get as much encouragement from me and each other as I get from you, just by you showing up with your smiling faces every Sunday and your loving hearts. I'm going to talk about opportunities today. I'm going to start off with a brief story that I believe illustrates the abundance of opportunities that fill our lives. I had a couple of stories. John told one of them this morning already. A man went to a strange town. He's a traveling salesman. Took his wife with him. He's going to be there for several days. He's new in town, didn't know anybody, so he booked in his wife and himself into a hotel. At the end of the first week, he got a bill, and on the bill, part of the bill, was a $20 fee for meals. Well, he hadn't eaten any meals there at that boarding house, nor had his wife. So he went down to the office. I want to talk to the owner. How can I help you? Sir, this $20 bill for food, I shouldn't have to pay that. I did not eat one meal, nor did my wife the week we were here. We ate out every night. The owner said, well, they were prepared. They were here for you. You could have ate if you wanted to. The man stormed out, comes back in a few minutes later, walks up to the owner, and presented the owner with a bill for $20. The owner says, what's this for? I'm charging you $20 for slapping my wife. The owner said, I didn't slap your wife. Well, she'd been right here for a week. You could have if you wanted to. What does that story illustrate? We're surrounded by opportunities every day, everywhere, all the time. There are things that are there that we could do if we wanted to, and if we first recognized that opportunity as an opportunity of something we can and should do. Jesus told a parable in the Bible about the importance of opportunities and seizing them in the 13th chapter of Matthew, verses 45 and 46. He said, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Aren't we also told in the Bible somewhere to buy the truth and sell it not? What does that very short parable, though, tell us? What's the Lord trying to teach us with that parable? It teaches about the opportunity that comes our way to discover the kingdom of the Lord. That was the pearl in that parable. The church. Seek to be a member of the church. You know, in Bible times, people went pretty wild about pearls, just like they do today. But that was a even bigger deal back then. Many people back then believed that oysters made pearls by condensing the dews of heaven. That's what made a pearl. There was a lot of mystique about pearls. The infamous Cleopatra was well known for her pearl collection, worth buku bucks. Well, Christ says that the church, or the kingdom, is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls. And he finds this one pearl. He's looking for the pearl, and he finds it. And he's going to have it no matter what it cost him, isn't he? He sold all that he had so he could buy that one pearl. Pretty big opportunity, wasn't it? Well, the church is precious. It's priceless, you might say. And it was expensive. It cost Jesus a lot to build that church and establish it. It's valuable, more so than pearls. It's beautiful, like pearls. And like pearls, it's often hidden. It's not laying out there in plain view. In one sense. In another sense, it's always in plain view. Depends on what you're trying to view. I did a little reading on pearls, and I found out that, as you may suspect, that it's very hard and very difficult to find a pearl that's worth anything in usable, sellable condition. It's got to be perfectly round, has to have the proper hue and luster and stuff like that. The church may be hidden, like pearls, in a world of other churches. A priceless pearl can be right there among a bunch of worthless, useless pearls. You got to be able to discern the difference so you can seize that opportunity to get that pearl. The church can be hidden amongst other churches or in the middle of tons of worldly affairs. But Jesus says this one merchant was very careful in seeking out the pearl and found that one pearl that had a great value. And when he found it, what did he do? Doesn't give us an indication he hem-hawed around. There was no question in his mind. He would and did sell everything he had to get possession of that one pearl. The Bible doesn't say he was haggling or quibbling over the price either. Simply says he went and sold that he had immediately and bought the one pearl of great price. He realized what a great possession that was going to be and what an awesome opportunity it was to get that pearl. Well, we have a life filled with opportunities, folks. We have the opportunity to live and enjoy this life in this world. We have an opportunity to be a Christian, a member of the Lord's church that He bought with His lifeblood. We have opportunities, as we have right now, to assemble together with other like-minded, Jesus-loving, God-fearing people and encourage one another. We sing with one another. We pray with one another. We worship God with one another. Because God is the pearl we're seeking. Those are precious opportunities. We have the opportunity to live in a land of freedom to a degree that the rest of the world doesn't know. You'll hear a lot of us complaining about our eroding freedoms, but look in the world around you. We still got it pretty good. We're just overwhelmed, inundated with opportunities. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to impress upon you the importance of opportunities. I want to share with you 3 things that the Bible clearly teaches about opportunities in our lives. Number 1 is that we have to look for them. Sometimes we might have the idea that if we just sit on our porch in a rocking chair, in the shade, or lay in our hammock or whatever, that sooner or later some golden, unique opportunity is going to come our way and just jump on the porch right beside us. Well, occasionally that might happen, rarely. Sometimes we'll stumble over an opportunity, sort of like getting hit right between the eyes with a 2x4. To get your attention. Hey, I'm an opportunity. And occasionally, that rare opportunity might show up and identify itself to us. Sometimes we stumble onto them, sometimes we don't. This merchant wasn't stumbling around, though, was he? He was shopping for the pearl. And what did he do when he found it? At whatever cost to him, he was going to own that pearl. Good on him. He was seeking it. He was out there looking for it. Why did he find that one pearl of great value? Because he was looking for it. And he was able to recognize it when he saw it. We've got to look for opportunities, but just as importantly, we got to be able to recognize them when they appear as an opportunity. And sometimes we mishandle opportunities. Sometimes we have the opportunity to speak. Sometimes we have opportunities to remain silent. And sometimes we need to seize both of those in their own way, don't we? What's that old saying? It is better to remain silent and thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. Another saying, anytime you argue with a fool, that only means two fools are arguing. Principle number 2 is that God is going to hold you and me accountable for the opportunities He gives us, whether we recognize them and seize them or not. You know that the Bible shows that if you neglect or reject an opportunity, there's going to be consequences. God is going to hold us accountable for opportunities that He sends us. The third principle that the Bible teaches us about opportunities is they only come once in the same form. Some of them never come twice. Some of them will show up in a different way at a different time and in a different place. But they rarely, if ever, show up twice. Let's see what the Bible teaches about those things. First of all, you have to look for them. As I said, you can't just sit on your porch, lay in your hammock, and wait for the opportunity to come for you. You got to get out there and look for it. Those kinds of opportunities are very rare, where they just come to you. It's like, hey, here I am, Tom. I'm an opportunity. Seize me. You know, sometimes we might get discouraged and we'll think, well, I don't have very many opportunities to do good. But that may be a result of principle number 1, because we're not out there looking for opportunities to do good. Sometimes we might even actually catch ourselves trying purposely to avoid opportunities to do good things. They may come disguised in different ways, and that's because sometimes opportunities do come disguised as maybe hard work. When that opportunity knocks, some people just complain about the noise, lock the door, and take it easy, while others take advantage of those opportunities. But the point is, we got to look for them. Now, the Bible contains illustrations of that principle. In 2 Kings chapter 5 is the story of Naaman. I'm not going to read that whole story, but I know we're all familiar with it. He was a military man. He was a high government official in the nation of Syria back in Old Testament times. He was a great man, by all accounts, a politically powerful man. He had a lot going for him. The Bible says that through him, God gave military victories to Syria. But he was a leper. He was inflicted with leprosy. Therefore, his body was being consumed by that ugly, ugly disease. Well, he was presented with many opportunities because of who he was. First of all, he presented with an opportunity to get cured of leprosy. This little Israeli maid who had been serving his wife, she was captured on one of their raids into Israel. She came to his wife, Naaman's wife, one day and said, "Oh, I wish my master Naaman would go over into Israel because there's a prophet there that can cure him of his leprosy." Well, that was an opportunity for him right there, wasn't it? Presented in the form of this little slave girl. Naaman didn't immediately recognize that opportunity, did he? And then when he did, he didn't really trust it. He was used to doing things through political or military channels. So he went to his king and said, "Hey, I've heard there's somebody over in Israel who can cure leprosy." But he almost missed an opportunity, didn't he? He wasn't trusting in it. He was going about it the wrong way. He looked for it in the wrong place, too. The king of Syria, as we know, sent a message to the king of Israel, say, I'm going to send my number one guy, old Naaman, over there so you can cure his leprosy. King of Israel said, I can't cure leprosy. This must be a trick. He just wants to get all his people over here to attack us because he wants to take more captives or whatever. He's trying to pick a fight with us. Fortunately, though, Elijah, who was the prophet that could cure the leprosy, heard about that and said, well, let's send a message to the king. Send him over here to me. Let him come. Send him over here to me. I'll show him that there's a prophet in Israel that can cure his leprosy. Well, Naaman finally went to Elijah's house, didn't he? But then he almost missed that opportunity again. He wasn't looking for it in the proper way or in the proper place because it was disguised. He came to Elijah's house, which was pretty much, from what we think we know, a little hut. And he came there with this big entourage he brought with him. Presents, camels, all kinds of attending people, all that other high government paraphernalia or whatever. And he stood there and waited for Elijah to come out and start going through all kinds of elaborate ceremonies and rituals and wave his hand over the leprosy and all of this. And when Elijah didn't even come out, he was getting ready to leave. He got mad. He was getting ready to leave. Well, behold, I thought this was the way it was going to be. All this ceremonial stuff. I thought Elijah was going to do this and that, but he didn't do this or that. I've been duped. Well, finally, one of his servants convinced him to go ahead and do as Elijah had said. He sent a message to him, which was dip in the Jordan River 7 times. He didn't immediately go down the Jordan River and dip 7 times. He was questioning that logic too. But finally he did, and what happened? Leprosy's cured. He almost missed one opportunity several different times because he wasn't looking for it in the right place. He was expecting it to show up undisguised, and he's expecting all this miraculous celebration and ceremony and stuff. Sometimes opportunities also come disguised as adversities or persecutions too. Think about that. In the 8th chapter of the book of Acts, verse 1, it says, at that time a great persecution arose against the church, which was at Jerusalem, and they were all scattered throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria. The church had been started in Jerusalem. It had been growing by leaps and bounds, from what we can tell. There were thousands of members in that church in Jerusalem, and suddenly they were being all scattered as a result of this great persecution that was going on. What'd they do? Did they just run off and hide? Can you just picture this group of Christians as they're fleeing the city of Jerusalem, just looking for a place to be quiet and undetected? They might have been walking down the road shaking their heads saying, well, that was great while it lasted. Wasn't it wonderful, though, to have all those people together, to be led by the apostles? But it's all over now. We just got to go hide out. Their whole world just got shattered. All their dreams were gone. But that wasn't their reaction, though, was it? Because they discovered an opportunity while they were fleeing and being scattered. Because 3 verses later, in verse 4 of Acts 8, it says, therefore those who were scattered went everywhere preaching the word. They saw an opportunity. It's not just for Jerusalem anymore. It's wherever we can go, we're going to preach that word. There's an opportunity, isn't it? They recognized it, they sought it, and they did it. They found an opportunity. That persecution, which scattered them abroad and prevented them from assembling in Jerusalem, was the very means and the very opportunity that enabled them to go out and spread the gospel over the whole world. But they were looking for it, weren't they? They didn't stumble across that opportunity. They looking for it, found it, seized it. Another thing about opportunities is that they may be so close to us, sometimes we fail to notice them. They might be right around us constantly. In John chapter 4, verse 35, Jesus gave us an illustration of that. He said, do you not stay or say there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields. They're already ripe for harvest. He's not talking about traditional, physical, literal picking the beans and tomatoes. Spiritual sowing and reaping and harvesting. He was talking about souls that were ripe and ready for the entry into the kingdom of Christ. There's a modern day counterpart to that. You know, we talk about doing mission work. And some of the brethren might say, well, you know, I wish I did have the opportunity and the financial means to perform mission work, but it's just so far over to where those people are. It costs so much money. We can't afford to send missionaries halfway around the world. You know, the opportunity doesn't have to be halfway around the world, though. I wish people would get rid of that mindset that when you say mission work, it means overseas. How many people are in Hartwell, Georgia, in Hart County, Georgia? How many people do we see here this morning? You know what that means? Looks to me like a lot of opportunities in this small area have been overlooked today by the people who aren't here. And even if they weren't overlooked, they weren't seized. They didn't seize the opportunity to be here. That's what it looks like. Opportunities are always there. They're always available if you're looking for them. The principle, that's principle number one. Principle number two is that God's going to hold us accountable for the opportunities He gives us that we don't seize. Take your Bibles when you go home this afternoon. Read with fear and trembling the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. Think about it real seriously and in depth. Jesus there is pictured as a Lord, a rich man who went on a journey to a far country. He called together his servants and he distributed his wealth to them for them to invest in a way that would cause it to grow, right? He was giving them an opportunity. One of them received 5 talents. One received 2. One of them received 1 talent. You know what they all did? Well, 2 of them invested those talents. One of them just buried his and hid it. Didn't want to take a chance on losing it. That parable, if it teaches anything at all, teaches that God is going to hold people accountable for their opportunities, and He gives, or that He gives us, because that master came back for a time of reckoning, you might say, with those servants, didn't he? Called them in one by one. Want to know what they'd done with the talents He gave them. What does God expect us to do with opportunities? Well, number one, He expects us to seize them. He expects us to take those opportunities after having discovered them as an opportunity, like the pearl merchant. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 6, talks about spiritual gifts in the early church. But the language applies to opportunities. It says there, having then gifts differing according to the grace that has been given to us, let us use them. He didn't say let us bury them or hide them, did He? He said let us use them. You plug in the word opportunities there, it's completely interchangeable. It would say, having then opportunities differing according to the grace that God has given us, let us use them. Use those opportunities for God's greater good, and you'll benefit from it too. And God expects us to seize opportunities with enthusiasm, not grudgingly. What did that merchant do when he found that great pearl? He went and sold everything he had and immediately bought that pearl. He didn't have to think about it for a week or two, or clear the purchase with his wife. There was a sense of urgency. He dealt with it immediately. He didn't quibble at all. He seized that opportunity with enthusiasm. He had made the find of a lifetime. Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 10 says, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might. Not haphazardly or later. Whatever you find to do, do it with all your might. When an opportunity to do good does come your way, God expects you and me to seize those opportunities. That's why He sent them to us. He expects us to seize them with enthusiasm. Furthermore, He expects us to seize opportunities with urgency. Today, book of Acts is filled with that day or that hour responses, isn't it? Not next week or next month. John 9 verse 4 says, I must work the works of Him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. That is not the procrastinator's creed, is it? Friends, we need to realize that time is going to close some doors and their opportunities. We need to seize opportunities with urgency and enthusiasm. If we get an opportunity to do a good work, to lead someone to Christ or to obey the gospel, we just can't say, well, I'm going to wait for a more convenient time. What time to seize an opportunity is better than when God gives you that opportunity? If He wanted you to do it later, wouldn't He give it to you later? Doesn't that make sound logic? He gave it to you now, so do it now. He further expects us to improve our opportunities or improve from them. He expects us to take advantage of those opportunities so that He can give us some more. And that's what He did in the parable of the talents. What did He say to those two other men? The one had 5 talents, one had 2 talents. He said in Matthew 25:21, well done, good and faithful servants, because you have been faithful over a few things, I'm going to make you manager over many things. Because you seized one opportunity, I'm going to give you many more, is what He's saying, because you did good work. I'm going to give you more opportunities because you took advantage of the ones you had. What does He say to the people who don't take advantage of opportunities? Well, in that same parable, in verses 28 and 29 of Matthew, this is Jesus speaking. Therefore, take the talent from him, were His instructions, and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. So we've got to be careful with opportunities, don't we? How we deal with them. Does God expect us to take advantage of them? You betcha. Is He going to hold us accountable for them? You betcha. The passages we've looked at today, and there are many more, teach that. Notice that it implies that if we neglect or reject an opportunity, there are going to be consequences. God expects us also to use integrity, ingenuity, and wisdom when we take advantage of opportunities. When an opportunity comes our way, look at it from all different angles and figure out how we can make something good out of that if it's a potential bad situation. How can we make something good out of this? That's what the early church did when they were scattered abroad. They looked for a way to make something good out of being run out of Jerusalem, and they preached the gospel everywhere they went. They used a little bit of ingenuity and wisdom, said, well, if we're going to be scattered out, we might as well go and take advantage of that opportunity to preach the word to the world. Now, we can substitute the word Hartwell for world there and preach the word to Hartwell. It's like the boy who fell in that vat of molasses. Once he fell in that vat of molasses, he says, oh, Lord, please make my tongue and stomach equal to this occasion. That was sort of like using ingenuity and wisdom and taking advantage of this opportunity for that boy in the vat of molasses. In the case of Naaman, that little servant girl serving in the house of Naaman took advantage of an opportunity to tell Naaman about the prophet in Israel, and that resulted in the nation of Syria hearing about the true God of Israel, didn't it? One little opportunity like that affected an entire nation. She seized an opportunity by planting an opportunity, you might say, in front of Naaman. They both seized an opportunity. They both benefited from it. And many other people benefited from their seizure of their opportunities. Another man who used ingenuity and wisdom in taking advantage of opportunities was Joseph. Genesis chapter 40, he had been thrown into prison. Thrown in there unjustly because of old Mrs. Potiphar made some false accusations about him flirting with her. Well, it just so happens that the chief butler and baker of Pharaoh were also thrown into prison with Joseph. And they woke up one day, they were pretty troubled because they'd both had dreams the night before and they couldn't figure out what their dreams meant. Well, Joseph heard them talking about those dreams and saw and seized an opportunity, didn't he? Tell me about your dreams, because God can interpret dreams. So they did. And you'll remember that Joseph was able to correctly, accurately interpret their dreams, and he said to the butler, now, when you get out, because that's what his dream was about, getting out. Once you get released, remember me to Pharaoh. Tell him what I've done here, because I was put in here unlawfully. Well, it took him a little longer than he wanted probably, but he did get his release, didn't he? And rewards for seizing that opportunity to promote God to that fellow inmates, he received so much reward, didn't he? He grew and excelled since then. He took advantage of a situation and he gained from it. Now, we got to be careful. Let's don't go around looking for opportunities to do good so that we will gain something. That should not be our motive. And if it is our only motive for doing good, there's probably not going to be too many rewards for us in our future, is there? You do good to do good. You don't do good to gain. You will gain if that's not your motive for doing good. Third principle, we're about to close out. Third principle that the Bible teaches us about opportunity is the same opportunity rarely, if ever, comes twice in the same way. We've been saying that's very similar to, or we have a saying that's very similar to that. Opportunity only knocks once. You've heard that. You've said that to your children probably. What happens to people who don't take advantage of opportunities? Let me tell you about a nation that didn't take advantage of an opportunity when it came. In Numbers, the whole nation of Israel was brought out of Egypt. They came right up to the very gates of the Promised Land. They could see it. They sent spies in there to check it out. They came back and said, this place is flowing with milk and honey. It's everything that our God promised us. And they had an opportunity to go on in. But they got cold feet and didn't. Why? Those people are big. They can whoop us. They got cold feet. They developed what many might call the grasshopper complex. They said, we are as grasshoppers before their sight. Those are big people. They're mean looking. They didn't take advantage of the opportunity when they could have and should have. And it cost them 40 more years of wandering, didn't it? 40 years before the opportunity reappeared for them to enter the promised land. And by then, guess what? All but 2 of them had died. Joshua and Caleb lived to go into the promised land. So the same opportunity doesn't come but once in the same way. Sometimes you'll get it in a different, God might say, old Tom didn't recognize it this way. I'll wait a little bit and I'll give it to him again so it'll appear as something else. Maybe he'll recognize it and seize it then. But the same opportunity will not appear to you twice in the exact same way. The Philippian jailer in Acts chapter 16 had an opportunity. He had Paul, an inspired apostle, right there to preach the gospel to him. And he did take advantage of that opportunity. He saw the opportunity. He seized the opportunity with enthusiasm. He didn't say, within the next couple of weeks, could you take me down and baptize me and maybe talk my family into doing it too? Immediate seizure of that opportunity. The very first time he heard the gospel, he obeyed it. Suppose he had not taken advantage of that opportunity. He might have obeyed the gospel later. We don't know. We weren't there. We just know what God gave us. But it says that very night, he and all his household were baptized. There's the sense of urgency, isn't it? Now, you know how family affairs go. Some of them can be pretty heart-wrenching when it comes to religious affairs. And you know how sometimes things are just right for a family member right now, but it could be all wrong next week. Or it's just wrong for a family member right now, but it could be right next week or next month for all of the members of a family to accept Christ. If the jailer had rejected that opportunity that day, that night, he might have obeyed later, we don't know, but he might have lost his household before later came. His household might not have all been there or might not been interested later. But they were interested tonight, so they did it tonight. The Lord expects us to seize opportunities with a sense of urgency and enthusiasm, and to remember that the same opportunity, if it comes back second, ain't going to look like it did the first time. The Greeks pictured opportunity as a woman walking, shuffling past your door, wearing soft shoes so you couldn't hear her, and all of her hair was combed or bunched in the front. That meant something to them. We don't understand it, but what it meant to them, that if you allowed that woman to walk past your door, and as she's passing, at the last minute, you decide to go ahead and grab her and say, what you doing here? You reach out, they would grab her by no hair. Her hair was all in front of her. That's what it meant to them. There was nothing to grab. You waited too long. If you grabbed her hair before she got by you, you had her hair to hang on. If you waited till she passed, there's nothing to grab. The opportunity had passed. Nothing to seize. What are your opportunities, our opportunities right now? Has the Lord given you time to study the Bible? Apparently. Your presence is proof of that. Maybe something has happened to you that you would consider an adversity. But maybe the Lord's given you an opportunity during that adversity. An opportunity to seize and help overcome that adversity. Maybe you have an opportunity to influence someone with the gospel message Maybe you're in a pretty unique position right now to help somebody today, or somebody you, Lord willing, we're all still living tomorrow, you plan on meeting with tomorrow. What does Galatians 6 and verse 10 say? Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially those of the household of faith. I've heard one or two people argue over the years, well, that's showing favoritism, especially to the household of faith. The Scripture did not exclude everybody else outside the household of faith. Get out there and preach the word to them so they'll become part of the household of faith. So we might have an opportunity right now that we maybe been too busy or too lazy to notice. Let's think about that. Let's get those opportunities identified and seized ASAP. We might be able to create a unique circumstance for someone that will get their attention. We have to be creative, truthful but creative. We have to make the message we're trying to share with people become attractive. The boy fell in a molasses vat. He wanted his appetite to meet the occasion. You suppose he'd have asked for that if he had fell in a vat of vinegar? Get me out of here, Lord. So, pretty sure we should use honey and not vinegar when we're trying to correct people or enlighten people. Tickle their appetite, but not their ears. Okay? There's a difference. Tickle their appetite, make them hungry, but don't just tickle their ears. We always have an opportunity to obey God. And at least in our younger years, I know we didn't all seize those opportunities to obey God, to proclaim God and Jesus to other people. When you or I are out amongst our busy days and we hear someone speak religious or doctrinal error, I'm not saying get in their face, point your finger. You heathen, that's not what the Bible says. You need to correct doctrinal or religious error. You have a command to do that, don't we? But we're to season our speech like with salt, not pepper, not especially cayenne pepper. We need to make the truth palatable when we're trying to correct some religious or doctrinal error. And we need to know what we're talking about. You can't just say, well, the Bible says this. Where does it say? Well, I don't know where it says, but it's in the Bible. If you can't at least quote the book and chapter, then just get on your smartphone, laptop, whatever. Look up where it says that you can quote 3 or 4 words out of any verse on that Google bar thing, and it'll pop up within 3 seconds and tell you what book, chapter, and verse that sentence came from. Well, this is where it says that. I'd appreciate it if you'd read it with me or just go home and study it, and we could talk as soon as you're ready. Plant the seed. It may get accepted, it may get rejected, but it's always an opportunity to be seized with enthusiasm and a sense of urgency. If anybody here today has anything they'd like to talk about, have a prayer request, have any kind of concern at all, something you'd like to share before the congregation, make your need known while we stand and sing our closing song.